You're watching Casually Baked, the podcast, home base for the canna curious. Thanks for tuning in.
It's high time. We had a high time together.
Settle in. It's time to get casually baked. Luke Zimmerman, it's so good to see you on your turf.
It's really good to see you too. Welcome to Portland, Oregon.
Thank you. I've done a lot of traveling since I last saw you.
I am very curious to hear about what's going on in Canada. That was kind of the cliffhanger. Did you read the book?
I did read the book. I did skip all of the recipes. I just wasn't in my Susie homemaker mode. But yeah, I was hoping that we could use today's podcast to just kind of be a grab bag of all things cannabis and culture. And I think there's been some interesting things happening on the IP front.
There has.
And so maybe you can fill us in on that too.
We can talk about hemp trademarks, or trademarks as they relate to hemp and CBD goods federally. We can talk about appellations of origin and what's going on with the CDFA and the working group in California.
Awesome.
What else can we talk about? I would think that those, since I've seen you, those are two of the biggest things that have been going on. And,
I think let's talk about this appellation project first because, when I was in Calgary, I hooked up with the cannabis sommelier for a 420 dinner party. Mm-hmm. And this is a young millennial kid who got into cannabis at like 16 years old and wanted to learn about tasting of cannabis. And so he went and became a sommelier.
See,
and we did. And, that whole idea of what's happening with wine, I'm like, we can totally turn that into, a cannabis parallel.
Oh, yeah, completely. What I think is kind of funny just from the get-go of that is when I was 16, my options of sommeliering was pressed, imported Mexican brickweed. So the idea of sommeliering or fine cannabis, we've come so far.
Yeah.
I love that there's opportunities like this for people.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
There was a girlfriend of mine and one of her, Holly Eisenberg, she was talking at one of these events that we had that she didn't even know that cannabis was green until she moved to California.
Yeah. I had to move out of my hometown before I knew that and was like, what is this?
Yeah.
But then when I moved out to Oregon in 2001, talking to people who grew up here, they're like, oh, yeah, what you're talking about, like this brick thing, I've heard of it, but like, where would you find that? And I'm that was 90% of what I saw growing up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When I lived in Dallas and, doing illicit things that I shouldn't have been doing, you show up at a house and there's like 5 or 6 of those and there's people like, breaking it off, putting it in baggies. And I'm like, oh, behind the scenes.
Right.
Great.
Did you ever see like the electric bread knife being used on one?
No, I didn't. I think that probably would have been a lot more clever than what they were doing.
Yeah. Saves the wrist action too. It's good.
So tell me about this appellation project. What's happening?
Okay. Do you know anything? If I said appellations of origin, is this like a blank
Not for me. You would not get a blank stare from me, but from the Casually Baked audience, maybe you would. So let's baby step it.
In the easiest way to have an association, and we're going to go with wine because currently in the United States, viticulture and appellation of origin is the only way appellations of origin are used in the United States. Mm-hmm. So if I said to you, would you prefer to buy a bottle of Pinot Noir from the Willamette River Valley, we'll keep it local.
There you go.
Or would you like a bottle of Pinot Noir from Temecula, California? And if there is an innate pull or an association where you're like, oh, Oregon is known for their Pinots.
I pick Willamette, damn it.
Hey, that's... if no one has trademarked that, there you go. And so that idea that there are certain regions that produce products that purely by the virtue that the product is made there, it probably has a superior quality. So it has an identity associated with it. This is well established. I mean, the Northern California wine culture and tourism is premised around a lot of this. And so the way we use appellation of origin in the United States is primarily a geographic region for wine that is smaller than a county, can cross into multiple states, but it has a GPS-defined boundary, and wine cultivated in that region gets to use this special indication. Now, what happened in 2015 with M. Mercrusa was we had the indication that appellation of origin will be allowed for cannabis in California, and we have moved to the point where the CDFA, or California Department of Food and Agriculture, is holding work groups right now to try and define what this is. And so where I said, in America, it's primarily just a geographic region. If you look towards the French model, and Europe uses appellation of origin for not just wine. There's actually the Lisbon Treaty protecting appellation of origin, which the United States is not a signatory to. We have not ratified it. We're not a signatory. But there's numerous goods. Israel has some oranges. There's some ham from Spain. And
the lemons in Italy, like all of these things.
And especially
yes, okay.
France, Italy, Mediterranean countries seem to love appellations of origin
Yes.
and geographic indication. So the CDFA is now trying to figure out what does it look like for cannabis? Because we're supposed to be at a point where we're accepting applications by 2021. Not that long. So
and you're one of the people that are helping figure out what this is going to look
there
like.
is 30 members of the working group.
Okay.
There's 3 attorneys. I'm one of the 3 attorneys. I give credit to Ryan Stoa, who maybe his book, the craft weed book.
I don't have it.
No.
Okay.
Recently published. Really interesting read. Probably the most published literature on appellation as it relates to cannabis that exists right now.
Okay.
He actually wrote a Harvard Law Review article that is accessible also and published that, I think, 3 years ago. So he was ahead of the curve.
Okay.
Richard Mendelson, who also sits in this, I'm seeing as the go-to guy for appellation. Like he owns his own vineyard. He knows more about wine, especially from the legal context, than anyone I've ever met. That listening to him talk is fascinating. And especially for having both of these other attorneys be very interested in wanting, it's an unbiased of how this should be. It's just we want to get it done right. We want to do justice.
So are these
to
people that are involved, is it the wine people that are involved because they structurally understand it and they know how to do this stuff, but they're also passionate about cannabis? Or is it because they're wanting to protect what happens in the wine industry and really keep a handle on what's happening in the cannabis space?
I see it even a little bit differently. It's more so they understand the legal structure and they want to get it right. It's just, let's do justice to this, because after we form it, going back and amending it is going to be a lot harder.
Right.
It's going to be hard enough to get this point.
Yeah, I can totally appreciate that.
And so there's 27 groups that are organizations that have different interests, either cultivation groups or regional groups or trade associations. And we're just collectively sharing ideas of how we think this should shake out. And there's definitely indication of some people think that this should be for outdoor sun, organic cultivated. And some people think that it should be for greenhouse, or there's some people who think it should be indoor.
I mean, those feel like they need to be 2 separate things to me.
And I agree with that. And I think right now, because this is something new, it's just everyone's voice needs to be heard.
Right.
Because there's also so many restrictions in California that in some regions you can only do greenhouse cultivation.
Now, are there other states that have some sort of a model, or this is the very first of its kind?
This will be the first in the world.
That's so fun.
It's so fun, so exciting. And for being here in Oregon, I've talked to Oregon attorneys about this. Southern Oregon, because the Emerald Triangle runs up into Southern Oregon, that region would benefit from this immensely. And I know appellations have been discussed in the legislature here once, but it didn't get brought to a vote.
Okay.
And so there's a thought that, we have a hope with the working group for the CDFA that if we get this done well enough, that other states would follow this model.
Sure.
Or even more ideally, internationally, this would have an impact. And when I was in Jamaica at the end of last year, I was speaking with some of the intellectual property attorneys I met there about this, and Jamaica's already on board with geographic indication for cannabis. That if they would have a trade group come together and say, maybe, the Blue Mountain is known for cannabis cultivation, we want to have a GI designated for there. If they could get the trade group to actually put that together, the federal agency would honor that, which is even a step farther than what we can do with this. So, we're looking at just state and local community organized organizations that will end up owning the appellation, where GI is something that's honored both by the federal government and then can be moved more into the international arena a little bit easier.
Okay, so when I think about this as a consumer,
Right.
because ultimately the people that listen, they're less growers, they're more consumers, and so it will potentially be one of those things where you go into a dispensary and you may be paying more for cannabis from a certain appellation than another one, right? So it'll be just like shopping for wine now.
And this is moving the dialogue forward with what is artisanal cannabis. What is, for the refined consumer, if you were going to buy something, this for the entry-level cannabis consumer, this probably doesn't have a lot of meaning. But if you're already at a point where I could say, I have some sour diesel cultivated in Mendocino, or I have sour diesel, and I hate that I'm picking on Temecula, but this is my go-to example, but I have some sour diesel cultivated in Temecula, do you have an initial gut feeling that one of these is probably better?
Right.
And seeing that already, I mean, there's a fair amount of people who have that level of consumer understanding. Now we're just going to refine that. And that is the other goal. I actually just got off a phone call before I came in here. The International Cannabis, INCBA, International Cannabis Lawyers Association. Why am I blanking on the acronym right now? It's because we added an international. Yeah,
we're not even casually baked yet.
This is true. So the National Cannabis Bar Association. There you go. We're in a bar. Wow. Yeah. We have formed a subcommittee of attorneys who are now going to start doing research into this. Our goal is to put on some events to educate both attorneys nationally about this issue, and then hopefully have a symposium this fall where we're going to bring together the academic, business, cultivators, and attorneys, and just kind of have a nexus point of all these different interests. Let's share information, let's do some networking, and kind of meet each other.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, that's an exciting project to be a part of.
I feel humbled, very honored, and very much I don't want to mess this up, because this is going to have a direct impact on thousands of people. And if we can do this well, I don't know how large this can grow, but I do see this as a viable lifeline for small farms that have been having a lot of integrity and a lot of intention in how they're cultivating their cannabis. This, and especially if there's a traditional component where maybe this is a region that multi-generations have been known for cultivating cannabis,
right?
That this could be a big leg up.
Yeah.
And we're honoring that tradition. And to me, that is, if we don't do something to protect that now, if you give it another 5 or 10 years, will people care about it when you talk about it?
Right.
You got to make it important to have it be important.
Exactly.
So.
Well, and it's important to have people that feel like that being, heading the charge, because we do want to make sure that we are protecting the culture and really protecting these second, third generation farmers and their legacy.
Yeah,
so thank you for what you're doing.
Well, you're welcome. And I just, as I said, I feel fortunate enough. This was, as opportunities go, this was probably, it's going to tie for the second or third most exciting thing I've done in my career. And I'm
next to being on Casually Baked, the podcast, of course, right?
Of course. That's top 5. I mean, we're not going to put the number of where that is, but it's definitely in the top 5.
Fair enough. I fish for compliments wherever I could get them.
Hey, I told you, I'm a sucker for compliments too. So that's
I know. I remember that about you. Mm-hmm. So we're at Rogue Hall having some local beer.
Right.
So what are some of your favorite things about the Portland cannabis culture that I need to make sure I dip my toe in while I'm here?
Well, I think you already went to the Northwest Cannabis Club.
I went for a lighting check. I've got to go back and sink into a booth.
Why that is nice is they do throw great events, but also if it's the middle of the day, you want to take your computer someplace, you're going to do some work, and you're like, you know what? I just want to have I want to be able to a place where I can drink some coffee, smoke a joint, and I'm in a public setting. You can do that there.
Yeah.
And they're
to explain to the listeners what Northwest Cannabis Club here is.
Northwest Cannabis Club is a private social club that allows cannabis consumption on site. And I mean,
Awesome.
they have set up volcanoes for you to use, dab rigs, e-nails. So they don't sell cannabis. They're not a dispensary. They're a private club. And you can just go in and socialize. So it's a very, I don't think there's another public consumption venue in Portland right now. So having that being a viable option is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it really had a great little atmosphere the few seconds that I was inside.
Did you go in the basement?
No, he was going to make me buy the annual membership and pay the $10 just to walk around and look at the place.
You're
I was like, man, tough crowd. Am I in Canada right now?
You're like, I am helping bring awareness to the cause. No.
I know, but
Well,
so we're going to try to go back.
Yeah, I
another
say
day.
try and check it out. It's a cool place.
Okay.
What else do I love here? Recently we had 420 since I've seen you. Portland and doing cannabis specials right now is phenomenal. I kind of laugh because for what I walked away with for $200 for going to different places for the daily specials compared to what you'll see in California, I felt so rich.
You got
in
a lot of
cannabis.
value.
I got a lot of value. So I love that. I think Portland, because it's so much more, you can navigate the city so much easier than a lot of Californian cities. Being able to just go on a dispensary tour, because we go from the high-end, look beautiful interior down to the like nitty-gritty, let's just get it done in and out. And for the most part, people are really friendly here. So I would encourage you, if you've got time, do that tour. I think that is very much worthwhile.
Okay.
The Ladies of Paradise shop over in Southeast. I don't know. Are you familiar with them?
I have heard about them.
Yeah,
Yes.
that they have their own store here. That would be worth checking out.
Okay.
What other things are standout?
But let's talk real quick, because you're talking about getting a lot of bang for your buck.
Right.
This, so like a gram of flour here,
Right.
you could get like a gram for like $5.
Right.
That's insane. How is that possible? Tell me what the situation is.
So, Oregon, if you look at our track and trace system, from what I have heard, I think we have like 1.4 million pounds of surplus.
So, again, great vacation spot, this Portland, Oregon.
I'm just saying, if you are a big
Wow.
smoker, like the idea that on 420 I was getting grams of shatter for $7 of beautiful, pristine shatter. It's like, yeah, I mean, California with all the tax issues that are going on, it's just not viable. Like, you can't, you couldn't see that. I also think that this is a little bit of a warning sign, because until we are allowed interstate commerce federally, the reality is it's a plant that can be cultivated over, 3-month span, and now trying to map demand. And California, because we don't have track and trace fully up and running, we don't actually have a good gauge of what production looks like in California. We don't have a good data set. When that comes online, what we saw in Oregon, at least, is when you see the amount of production, that also can spark a fire for bottoming out of value.
Well, that's what I was concerned about.
Yeah.
Just like, how are these farmers, how are these cultivators making it?
It's rough. It is really rough.
I mean, they got to have like 2 or 3 side hustles.
I think that is, in some cases, and the other reality is some people just lose the farm.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
hate that.
I hate that too. And I hate it because a lot of the people who are experiencing that are the people who fought to get here, and then having business planning for a model that probably more rose-colored glasses than was real, and within 2 years being like, oh man, this shit isn't good. I remembered I can swear on this.
Yeah, you can.
Shit is not good.
That shit is not good.
It is not good. So,
Man.
and so actually in what we saw in Oregon then was a big pivot. A lot of people moved away from cannabis and moved towards hemp, because hemp was the next viable. Some of the people saw the federal restrictions on CBD probably going to be going away much sooner than anything we saw for cannabis.
Right.
So especially Southern Oregon, a number of farms just pivoted over and started doing hemp production.
Interesting. And so you had mentioned earlier that because of what's happening federally, that's also opening some doors in the IP department.
Yeah.
And so these people that are transitioning over, they're able to create these viable brands now.
And that, I think, is, I am calling 2019 the year of hemp trademarks. Because at the end of 2018, the Farm Bill was passed December 20th. Signed into law. What that did was reschedule the definition of hemp through the CSA, and hemp was no longer included in the Controlled Substances Act. That so long it is 0.3% or less THC by dried biomass, it is qualified as hemp. And by removing it from the CSA, the biggest issue cannabis brands had, or cannabis trademarks had at the federal level, was you'd get a CSA inquiry of, are you violating the Controlled Substances Act?
Got it.
So as of December 20th, now I can affirm it so long as it's 0.3% or less THC, I can affirmly say, oh, there's no CSA violation. What is up next is FDA violations. And as of now, there are any food additive, anything, actually Oregon's wonky, I will get to that. Anything we're ingesting in food, commercial food, should be GRAS certified, which is generally regarded as safe by the FDA.
Okay.
And so when
I was like, GRS, what does that stand for?
Hold on,
If it's
you're missing an S. There's one more S here.
Copy that.
And so it's CBD is not GRAS certified yet. So anything that is ingestible, anything that would go in an orifice, is still not federally certified. The federal FDA is starting to have reviews at the end of this month about the safety of CBD as a food or as an additive.
Got it.
So I've heard a timeline of anywhere from 9 months to 2 years. We'll probably have a decision of if that will be allowed. But the anomaly, from my understanding here in Oregon, other things you need to see. Voodoo Donuts, probably just on the basis that you got to see Voodoo Donuts.
Yes.
Blue Star Donuts.
I can stuff one of those in one of my orifices without getting FDA approval.
I don't know where Voodoo stands on this, but if you go to Blue Star, they have a chocolate donut that is a CBD chocolate donut. And so the anomaly of Oregon is you'll see CBD foodstuffs and additives all over at commercial businesses.
Yeah, I had a CBD beer topper yesterday.
Right. California, Slow just sent out 1,600 notices of violation for businesses. So California is handling this totally differently than Oregon.
Yeah.
Oregon actually reminds me of the last time I was in Amsterdam, where it was like, how many different products can we put CBD into, even if that doesn't seem to make sense? But you're like, sure, yeah, a muffin with a coffee. Okay. And it's okay. Well, and some water even. Wow. Okay. Let's just do that. Okay.
It feels like it jumped the shark.
It did.
I'm like, this is ridiculous. When I saw Carl's Jr. on 420,
that's wild.
I'm like, oh my God, fuck off with all this stuff, people.
Well, so yes and no. I think one, it normalizes it, which advances cannabis. Two, I think it gives room for science and doing research. What is this really, which we need?
Yes, but I don't think it necessarily normalizes it. I feel like it glorifies it. And to where someone is like, oh, now I can have a tasty burger or a donut,
right,
and it's healthy because I added CBD to it.
I think there is a lot of misinformation that is created from it. I'll agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think having Kim Kardashian have a baby shower that's CBD themed really helped the cause. Did you follow that?
I know one of the brands that was involved in all of that. I'm not on the Kardashian train.
I am not either. But I'm just
my girlfriends keep me up to speed on what's happening with a lot of this stuff.
Well, you gotta be on the pulse. You don't need to be on, but you kind of got to be on the pulse.
I need to know, but I don't necessarily want to know.
Exactly. I mean, you can't be an ostrich. You can't just put your head in the sand. These things are happening. But back at the USPTO, so it's exciting. It's this opening up, and what we're seeing a lot of companies do is if they have a CBD model or a plan, a lot of the classes you're going to register in for hemp or CBD are the classes you want in the future for THC. Mm-hmm. So asking an examining officer point blank, hey, can I can I register a trademark for hemp cigarettes? And having him go, well, does it offend any federal agency you can think of? And I'm like, I don't think anyone has the jurisdiction to control this. He's like, well, then we would probably grant it. So I'm like, okay, that's essentially just saying low THC joints are now federal. Okay. And so I think you're going to see business expansion models and registration of federal trademarks in a way that is not it. To me, like the floodgates are almost completely open now.
Okay.
And at least from a strategy standpoint, you can do a lot more aggressive registrations than you could in 2018. Mm-hmm. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
And you're going to see where, if you're looking at how federal trademarks were registered, it was clothing and apparel, then information services. Mm-hmm. Now we have the opportunity with CBD goods to actually have goods that are going to be federally legal and can seek trademark protection.
So for my CBD muscle rub that I'm doing, is that like a health and beauty category? Like what category does that go
Class
in?
3, which would be cosmetics, lotions, beauty products. And an interesting thing about that is, and once again, most of the application, I don't think there has been a registration that's been granted yet under this new.
Okay.
But for talking to the FDA, they said, it's so long as it's cosmetic good that is accurate in its labeling with ingredients. Mm-hmm. There are no illegal ingredients in it. And then lastly, there's nothing that would hurt the consumer. You would be able to be allowed registration. Oh, and you're not making any medical claims.
Yep.
And that, I think, is going to hang up some of the more established businesses. And actually, that's where we're going to see the first round of enforcement is businesses that are making some egregious CBD medical claims.
And so on the back of my label, I have, this is not approved by the FDA to do blah, 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 blah. But in the ingredients, I have the ingredients, and at the end, it's like in a proprietary essential oil blend. Like, do I need to spell out what each of those are?
I would, yes. I would say yes.
Damn it, man.
I mean, I would talk to an attorney. I'm glossing this over.
Yeah,
glossing this over quickly.
I'm like, hey, are you kicking me out of the party?
No. What you would hate to have happen is you say, I have this proprietary blend, and then it turns out one of those herbs or oils someone's allergic to, and they were not able to accurately be put on notice that this is what they were rubbing on their skin. They get hives. You get sued for products liability. This sky is falling now.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that's why clear ingredients, and really in the theory of trade secrets, herbs and spices of KFC. That's the go-to example. Because you can see the ingredient list. They'll tell you what they all are. They just don't tell you the ratios. And that is the proprietary aspect.
Got it.
Coca-Cola, we can look at the ingredients list. You know exactly what's in there.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you do it.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Good information.
Good
All
to
good.
know. Good to know.
Yeah. So, after our last talk, I did my homework.
Right.
I went to Calgary. I've been having some business conversations there. Read the book. I went to Hall of Flowers. I sat in on an IP. And
how was that? Was that amazing?
It was really good. It was good to be there. It was good to be absorbing that information because it's like we had the talk and then I'm layering it. It's kind of like media. You have to hear things 5, 6, 7 times before it sinks in.
Makes sense.
And then that's when I was like, okay, hi, it's time for us to talk for real now.
I like it. It's good. And we definitely, off air, we follow-up conversation, and I think that's good. Hall of Flowers, from my understanding now, is going to go on twice a year. Is that
I don't know.
Because I think the show that just happened, and then there's going to be a fall show.
Are they going to do that in like LA or something?
No, Santa Rosa is.
Hell yeah.
And I am really interested in checking that out. I heard such positive things about the first event that.
Well, let me tell you why. Because the people that put this event on are not from the cannabis space. These people are like from wedding and the event world.
Right.
And they know how to put on a slick event that's well operated, and it looks clean and it looks pretty. Right. And now I will say they needed more cashiers and
I heard that there was a problem with samples.
Yeah, that was insane because people were just going around and grabbing, the sample card from everyone, and then they go get in line. Someone from inside the cannabis world who I don't necessarily need a bunch of free stuff. And so
Right.
I was in line with 2 sample cards.
Right. Intentional. I want to try these specific things.
People
right.
in front of me with like 20 and 30 cards,
Right.
and this line was snaking around forever. And I'm like, I think I played this game wrong.
Right.
So
You need to
somebody,
grab-
people were like, here, do you want to free this or this? And all of a sudden, by the time I got to the front, I had like 5 cards.
Right.
But it was kind of a mess. And
Right.
at the end, there was one thing I really wanted to try, and I just wasn't willing to get back in that line. I was like, I'd rather buy it at a store.
Fair. Well, so that's the room for improvement. You know,
right.
I'm sure, especially seeing the responses, because that was the biggest concern I saw people vocalize.
Yeah.
And let alone what happened to the samples that didn't get used. Because from my understanding, those were not able to be remitted to the businesses. Those were an obligatory must be destroyed per BCC.
Are you effing kidding me?
I am not effing kidding you.
Okay, there's already so much waste in
Oh, yeah.
packaging.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And if now you're making us waste products,
Yeah.
that makes my blood boil.
Yeah. And to be like, wait, so there wasn't a compassionate option that we could do to...
Right.
Because I'm sure, you know, if you already went there with, this is going to be given away, let's give it away. And then being, oh, we didn't have time to give it away, so we might as well just destroy it.
Well, and even a compassion program paying $1 for each of those products versus,
Yeah.
nothing.
And I think that is one of the areas I know some attorneys who are working on compassion. Dale Schaefer and Kelson, you guys are gems. We can do better. And that is, I think, getting past some of the fears that we have about what is the sky falling effect of legal cannabis going to look like. And then being like, that's overblown. Like, let's be honest about it. You don't need this child-resistant packaging. We're creating more waste than is really worthwhile. Also, if there is leftover product for something, there are people in need. You know, it's legal to gift cannabis in Oregon. If I'm out for the night and I find myself going home and I'm walking by a homeless person and I still have a joint in my pocket, I'm going to give it away.
Yeah, but isn't that's legal in California too?
Gifting is legal in California too.
Okay, so at the Circular Summit, it was an entrepreneurial, female entrepreneur event that was put on by Alice and who was the other, like Bumble Biz, a couple, Garden Society, a few brands put this together, just women empowering women. And one of the women that I met there, her name is Tammy Wall, and she is a policy advisor in D.C. And we had a group of female cannabis entrepreneurs that were all together for a few hours one day. And she was just saying, like, hey, y'all reach out to me. Let me know what these policies need to look like. Where are these pain points? What are the things that we need to be talking about to make sure it gets built into the federal laws that we're trying to put together? So something like that, to me, is like, okay, that needs to be addressed for sure.
There should be built into the federal government a gifting program for veterans, point blank. There should be a federal just reserve of cannabis that if vets want to use that for alternative health treatment, that should be integrated into their health plan, and that should be available free of cost, in my opinion.
Right. You know, I'm going to connect you with Tammy, either via LinkedIn or something.
Yeah.
Because I do think she would also appreciate hearing your voice on these things.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a village, damn it.
Takes a village. I also think we are at a unique time where more people who are maybe not of the culture are being receptive to what is being said, especially at higher levels of government, that this is the time to act. Because to hear that policy, I'm sure, is well shaped for what the theory of what this would look like with federal legalization, now is the time to have influence. Because much like this appellation thing, after you set it up, trying to go back and change it is really hard. And that's, especially for things in California, anything that's going to require a vote, trying to get voters interested and active again, unless they have a vested interest. They're like, oh, it's legalized.
Yeah.
We're done. We're good. And
Well,
you're like, it's not good.
Yeah.
There's still a lot that we can do better. And
Well, and whenever you're planning something in a boardroom and it's like ideas on paper, things
Right.
look really good, but like I did experiential marketing. I was the one that would then have to take this plan and then be boots on the ground and put it into action.
Right.
And once you're there, it's like, this doesn't exactly work.
Right.
We
not
need to
the
shift
intersection
it. Yeah.
isn't there.
So having the voices of the
Yeah.
people that are the boots on the ground and saying like, okay, this didn't work that well in California, or these are the hiccups we're having in Oregon, or these are the problems in Colorado, and being able to have all of these voices
Yeah.
helping shape that. So if you are out there and you're trying to figure out how to get involved locally, then think about calling your congressman or
Local
reaching out.
representatives.
And
Look for your local trade groups that are actually doing political work. I think that's a great way of contributing to that, so long as you can do the inquiry. Are they doing good work? I believe in that still. I know that there's a number of groups that are doing Capitol Hill Days. So if you can afford to take the time to go and do that, go to Washington, D.C. and talk to somebody.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, I have gotten my panties in a wad overseeing these $1,000 gold-plated one-hitters and things. And I'm just like, okay, you want to be cool. You want to buy this expensive stuff. Like,
Okay, hold on.
spend some money on compassionate cannabis while you're out there.
This is an interesting question. So if you're like, ooh, $1,000 gold-plated one-hitter, what do you feel about a $1,000 glass bong that is, like, beautiful? Is that the same idea, or are those two separate things?
Well, it depends on who you are. If
Fair.
you're a 20-year cannabis consumer,
Right.
and you every evening you have your reefer recap and you
Right.
hit your bong and like replay your day, and you want to spend that kind of money and have a piece that's like, this is my downtime kind of thing, I'm into this.
Right.
Or if you're somebody that has a puppy in your purse and you go into Saks and you're like, oh, look at this
This is the
cute
thing.
gold one
I
hitter.
got you. Okay.
That's where I'm just like,
Have you heard of the DFO,
no,
the degenerate flame off?
no.
No.
What is
So this is another, it's an Oregon thing.
Okay.
And have you seen degenerate glass art, or why am I blanking? Man, I'm blanking on a lot of things today. Degenerate art. Thank you. No?
No, I mean, I know those two words separately, but then you put them together.
That's fair. So the history of glass pipes really is from Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
So as a American craft, American art form, a lot of it came out of Eugene. And so what we have, and for I think 8 years, the DFO went on in Eugene in the Whitaker district. And now last year it was out in Gresham here in Portland, and this year it's going to go on in Gresham as well. And it is where like Champs or AGE is very much about the sales side of glass.
Okay.
This is more just about the celebration of glass. And this is bringing the top glass artists from all over America to come together and do demos in front of people who are glass nerds.
That's fun to watch.
And I was going to say, if you guys could make it up for that, if you've never been to one of these events,
I've just seen it at Maker Faire. People like
Gotcha.
blowing glass at Maker Faire.
It is a...
It's not that.
where you're like, hold on, it took you 8 hours and you made what? Like,
Yeah.
holy shit. There's a revolution. When I teach at Amsterdam and I teach the copyright section, I talk about glass pieces having this revolutionary artistic renaissance, because, and actually a number of the glass manufacturers of the raw glass are here in Portland also. North Star, I think Glass Alchemy is here. Troutman Glass used to be here. I think North Star bought them, but there's colors that didn't even exist 3 years ago that now exist because the cannabis industry has more money moving into it, which then finances the glass industry, which then advances this whole art form.
Okay.
Unique thing. But really out of, like, when I lived in Eugene, the joke was you couldn't throw a pipe without hitting a glass blower. And it's become even more popular to the point where I think the market is much like some of the cannabis space, saturated. But to see the real craftspeople make these things, where some of the pieces you look at it and you're like, that's not even a pipe, and you're like, actually that's 3 pipes. What? And just beautiful, to the point where you could have it very legitimately on your, coffee table, and just aesthetically, if you're into sculpture, totally fits that desire.
It's a centerpiece. It's a talking point. It's a bong.
And it's a bong. Yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah. So I mean, if you guys and the footage that you would get from that, I have found that, I mean, by the virtue of living in Oregon, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of really famous glassblowers. This is an untapped, it's the subculture of a subculture.
Yeah.
And that has existed in a parallel with the cannabis space, but always had to be kept separate because of paraphernalia laws. And now it's this overlap. It's this, once again, unique moment in time for what we're seeing, where it's like time to shine.
Clouds have parted. Here's the rainbow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are into I hope you come up for it.
I mean, even if nothing else, to just
Right.
get casually baked and watch that process where they got the.
So
it's just cool to see.
That's like, I would leave you with, go see Degenerate Art. I believe Marble Slinger made it, I think, almost 10 years ago now.
Okay.
I think it's still on YouTube. It was on Netflix for a little while. I think it was on Hulu for a little while. But it gives you, and he filmed it really in a creative way where it removes it from cannabis. I don't even think they say cannabis in the documentary at all.
Interesting.
But to see, and everyone has this different aesthetic. It's like to me it has a feel of what like graffiti art had, or skateboarding had, where it was like this edgy alternative thing that slowly got, or punk rock or hip hop, slowly got assimilated into major culture. And that is what this breakdown of having to keep cannabis and glass separate, that's what we're seeing. But yeah, I can't speak highly enough about this event, because watching what people can make in that amount of time is just phenomenal.
Well, and to see how the cannabis culture is evolving, and we're trying to normalize it, so it's fun that we have got to see all those other cultures normalized. Of course, all the the hipsters that were involved with them, they're like, well, now it's not cool. But I don't care. I want cannabis to be accessible to everyone. So if you don't think it's cool anymore, fuck off.
Go find the next underground thing then.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I like.
Psilocybin will be their next one.
We are already trying to legalize that.
I know. That's so exciting, too.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to do another show on that.
Yeah.
I've met this really wonderful woman. I'm going to go to see her outside of Big Sur.
Cool.
And we're going to
I'm excited about
talk
that.
about all of the things.
Have you met anyone from MAPS in the Bay Area?
I mean, I've met some of them at a few of the conferences, but I
Right.
haven't had anyone on the show.
They would be, I think that's great content to cover too,
Yeah.
because really that paradigm shift is, there was an intention of cannabis legalization and backing cannabis legalization as cannabis being a psychedelic.
Right.
And then being like, well, where can we go?
Well, yeah, because it's like, okay, let's open the portfolio. Cannabis first,
Right.
psilocybin next. What's
Right.
going to be next? What
And
do you
that,
think?
like,
What do you
okay.
think is going to be the next one?
I think we're going to have a big hang up after psilocybin.
Yeah.
Because everything else, I've talked to a few people who are members of the group, and there's such a orchestrated propaganda, point blank, this is all bad, that you can't even look at it in an honest light. And I think that, and for talking to some people, they're like, psilocybin was the easy play because half the people can't pronounce the word. So it's more of a blank palette to be like, oh yeah, like let's have a discourse about this.
Yeah.
And that, I think, finding something else that doesn't have either a 1970s or 1980s stigma attached to it would be really, really hard. But I don't think it's going to stop. I think a reevaluation of, instead of just saying blanket, this has no value, has no use, we're at a period where looking at different substances and saying, it's not gates come down and free for all, but it's not bedlam. There might be value here that we have just overlooked. And I think that is a really unique opportunity to be like, well, let's have some honest dialogue about this.
Yeah.
Instead of cracking an egg, throwing it in a frying pan and being like, this is your life. And then
Yeah, this is your brain. This is your brain on drugs.
exactly. And
It's time
clearly
for breakfast.
everybody, right? You hate eggs. No. And clearly there is a lot of people who found a lot of success, a lot of happiness, a lot of normal life living who've had experiences like that.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the beautiful things about the cannabis movement is people who have aspects of their life like this are feeling more confident and coming out and saying, well, this is who I am. I disagree with this law. I want, and not I am just going to be persecuted for it. I'm behind closed doors. This is wrong. It's I can do something about this, and I feel empowered, and I want to get involved, and I want to do something differently because this is not how I see the country. This is not the country that I want to live in.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very unique opportunity in time, especially for talking to people who are older who are like, man, I never saw this coming with cannabis. And I'm like, you give this another 10 years, this is going to, the traction is just picking up from what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And it's not, once again, it's not just an American thing.
Yeah.
This is going on in other places around the world.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's the collective Aquarius shift that we're seeing or what this is, but
well, and that's a good point for us to wrap up and leave on is this idea that the world changes, we never stop evolving as humans, as a culture, and that we all have the right to change our mind. And policy makers and politicians and people that have their whole life had said like, I don't believe in pot, like it's the devil's lettuce and like all of the things. Well, now that you know better, you can do better, and it's okay to change your mind.
And I think
nobody's going to hate you for it.
The pause, like the hiccup in consciousness, is when you start to look at it and instead of just saying, were these policies purely about protecting my interest, or was there a secondary interest involved?
Oh, yeah.
And then being like, well, hold on. Why do we have a privatized, criminal justice system? Why are we doing incarceration at private? Why can I buy the stock in a private prison? And starting to be like, did we just orchestrate something?
Yeah.
Or did that get orchestrated for us, and we just kind of fell in line because we were told that was how it's
right.
going to be?
It's like interesting. Private prisons, and we have 5% of the population and 25% of the world's prisoners. Coincidence?
No.
I think not.
Failed war on drugs?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, it's always fun to talk to you.
Thank you.
And
it's always fun to talk to you,
I
too.
appreciate you making time. I know you've got a
Very
lot of
busy,
things
man.
going on.
Yeah,
I
man,
know.
I'm going to prom tomorrow night.
Wow.
I know. You're like, no, I have a group of friends here in town that they've been putting on Portland prom for the last 10 years. This is the last year they're going to do it. So we're just going to have this prom, man.
A prom for people who like fucked up their high school prom and they want to do over or what?
I don't know if I want to do over. Being able to drink legally, that's cool. That's a huge difference.
Did you rent the tux or do you own it?
I'm going to go like thrift shop, some fun outfit,
okay, all right.
and just go. I'm lowbrow. That's the thing. No one's taking themselves too seriously.
Okay.
So it's
that's
it's
fun.
A good time.
That sounds very Portland.
Yeah. It's very Portland.
Keep Portland weird.
There you go. That sounds like
even though you
Austin.
stole it from Austin.
Allegedly, that is an alleged theft. I don't think there's any factual basis for that.
Can we look up the IP on that?
Let's look at the history first. And I want to see if anyone owns that as a trademark. That's actually good.
All right.
Next time we talk, I'm going to have that information.
All right.
Okay, keep it weird. Where is that owned?
That's right. All right,
cheers.
Thanks for hanging out.
I wish this was a joint. Okay. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
We'll smoke a joint outside.
Okay, that works. That's good. Thanks.
We had a high time together.
Casually Baked, the podcast, was created, recorded, and produced by yours truly. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of Arnav Gupta. La Osa is in the house capturing and editing the video version of the podcast, available on YouTube and channel 203 on Cannabis Club TV.